Yeah, thanks everyone for coming to another of our event series here at Newton for Everyone. I'm Luke Mann O'Halloran. I'm part of the steering committee here at Newton for Everyone. It's great to see so many folks here in the room and about 30 people on the Zoom as well. If you're not familiar with us at Newton for Everyone, we are a pro-housing organization advocating for a diverse array of housing opportunities here in Newton for people of all ages, means, and backgrounds to be able to live here. And we're here tonight to discuss affordable housing. It's one of the driving motivations for us as a group, as Newton for Everyone, in terms of why we're doing what we're doing. We think about other things. We think about climate. We think about the finances of the city and the vibrances of our village centers. But we chose the name Newton for Everyone because we believe that we want Newton to be a city where anyone could live, regardless of what they do for work, what their background is. We want to be welcoming and inclusive people from all walks of life. And for many people, the barrier to being part of our community is affordability. And one thing that we're proud of as being part of the city is that this is a perspective I think that's shared with our fellow citizens here in Newton. I think it's a broad priority when you go to listening tours that some of our city council have or that the mayor has. If you read some of the posts on Facebook, don't recommend reading all the posts on Facebook, but or read the neighborhood listservs. The topic of affordability is really important to Newton voters and members of the community, and I think that speaks well to our values as a city. A desire to have a city that's not just for doctors and lawyers and software engineers, but also for our preschool teachers, the educators in our high schools, the people, the nurses and janitorial staff at the hospitals, the people that make the burritos at Chipotle in Newtonville. I think many of us here in Newton would like those people to be able to live here if they wanted to. And it's a hard problem. Obviously, if you've paid any attention to housing prices, you're here, you probably know that. And what we're going to do tonight is sort of get a sense of the scale of the problem. What are we talking about? What do we have in terms of affordable housing today? What do we even mean when we talk about that? And what can we do to work on this problem and work to address it? So we have a wonderful guest here tonight that's going to talk about it. There's a bit of background. In 2023, Newton's 3 sort of citizen housing boards and commissions formed a task force to analyze the sort of inventory of affordable housing in the city. They wanted to have sort of a foundation and understanding of what are we working with, what's the sort of current state of things, what affordable housing does the city have, where is it, what's its condition, critically, what has influenced the creation of that affordable housing. The groups included the Affordable Housing Trust, which has a goal of creating, preserving, and funding low and moderate income housing. The Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership, which fosters and supports and advocates for an economically diverse city. And the Newton Housing Partnership, which manages the Newton Housing Authority, which administers public housing. There's not going to be a quiz at the end of the night. The point is that the task force included representatives from all of the sort of governmental and non-governmental bodies that sort of think about affordable housing here in Newton. And we are very fortunate here to have Ann Houston, who is the chair of the Housing Trust and was a member of that task force. She's going to present on what that task force found, what's worked in the past to help create affordable housing, and where we should go from here. So, take it away.
Well, thank you. Let's definitely taller. So thank you for that introduction, Luke, and for getting us through the commission background. And really, thank you to Newton for Everyone for excellent work promoting diversity in our city. It's such an important goal. And I'm really pleased to share the work of my colleagues and I, several of whom are in this room, to understand our affordable housing needs. It's not news that the Commonwealth has an affordable housing crisis, has a housing crisis in general. And increasing the supply of housing across markets is the best way to temper prices. But supply alone is not going to address affordable housing, housing for low-income people. For that, we need really targeted answers. So our task force really had three key findings. First, that we need to increase every type of affordable housing, but particularly low-income family housing. Two, we need to rely on 40B and inclusionary zoning to produce ownership housing rather than directly funded. And three, we need to plan for and invest to preserve our existing affordable housing. So I'm going to tell you why. I'd like to share why, and apologies. It's going to cover a lot of information. It's not too fast. Luke said perhaps wonky, but I've tried it, and for many of you, it's going to be information you know, but I think that there are a couple of pieces that will be were interesting to me after 40 years of doing this. So with that, let's see, and I'm just going to skim through this. So affordable housing is housing that's restricted to people at 80% of the median income and below. And in Newton, we also restrict some housing under inclusionary zoning for people in the 80 to 110%. And we're going to come back and look at what are those incomes and who fits them. And, you know, the market just doesn't provide housing for people below 80%. And we have to actually do that through subsidies that are provided in exchange for affordable prices. And so once again, you know, in a high-cost market like Newton, the market is not going to provide that sort of middle market housing much. Anyone who's been, you know, a middle income person and tried to buy in the Newton market knows you can't do it. But the solutions to that problem are different than the solutions to affordable housing, to low income housing. And part of the report, we recommended that that's something that needs to be studied as well. So here are a couple of really key concepts that we're going to talk about throughout the evening. One is median income. It's really simple. It's that absolute center. 50% of the incomes are higher, 50% of the incomes are lower in a population, and every year the federal government calculates the median income for a region. We're in the Boston, Quincy, metro. We're in the Boston metro area, and the median is then broken down into different tiers and by household size. And the other key concept is that there are two paths to affordability. There is deep subsidies. This is what we think about as traditional affordable housing, deep government subsidies of capital grants or loans and operating grants that generally target low and very low income people. And the other is local development approvals. We think about Chapter 40B and inclusionary zoning, where the local community, where Newton provides permitting in exchange for some affordable units. And the developer internally subsidizes that affordability. And so in those properties, about 15 to 25% of the units are affordable. Whoops. Okay. There's a lot going on in this slide. But I actually found it a really interesting exercise. It looks at how pay in Newton in relation to that median income. In a sample of jobs that, I thought were important for the viability of our community. So the middle bar is just a sampling of the area median income and you see if we start, I have to stay with the microphone. If we start at the 100%, so a family of one is right in the middle of our income if they make $112,650, right? This is 2026 income. And then it's broken down, and that's really moderate or market income. Low moderate income, Josephine and I would say moderate, definitely not low, is 80%. And a lot of our programs, inclusionary zoning and comprehensive permits, tend to produce 80% income. Below that is the level that the deeper subsidies generally come into play. 60% is the traditional. We traditionally think about low-income housing as affordable to households at 60% or below of income. So very low income, 50%, extremely low income is 30%. So who is at that 30%? Boy, they're people we probably all consider friends and talk with every day. Retail workers, when I go into Whole Foods and have all my friends that I chat with, that's who is extremely low income. We look at very low income. Newton Public Schools teaching assistant. Those people working in the classrooms. Personal care attendants, the people who care for seniors. I think many of us in this room have some vested interest in having good PCA available. Secretaries, early childhood teachers, the people who are responsible for our children in the most vulnerable and important stage of their development. All of those people are very low income. Their salaries are very low income. Here was a real surprise. Low income, a Newton public teacher with 1 year, in their first year of teaching with a master's degree, so probably some school loans, they're low income. And a Newton public teacher with 5 years and a master's is low mod. The only one of my sample group that made it to the moderate were nurses with 5 years experience. My children. I'm sorry, I was sure I had turned that off. So I think that this is a really important, and then we look at what happens if you have 2 people in the family who are earning, and I just doubled the salaries. And, the personal care attendants, the teaching assistants, the early childhood teachers, they're all still low mod. The market is not providing housing for these people. So when we talk about, we want Newton to be for everyone, except for all these people. So clearly housing is too expensive. And we consider a household cost burden if they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. In Newton, 42% of renters and 24% of homeowners were cost burdened in 2022. The average rent in Newton today is $3,500 for a 2-bedroom. That requires an income of $140,000 a year. It's 100% AMI for a family of 3, and about 75% of our renters don't make less than that. The average home sales price is $1.7 million. It requires $250,000 down payment and an income of $45,600 in income. So that's 350% of the median. Hard to buy in this market. Thank you. David and I have done a lot of this work together, and he knows I kind of have verbal dyslexia with numbers, and so he and Luke are both empowered to interrupt me. Okay, so here's the housing dilemma that faces families. Got a family, 2 adults and a child, right at the median. And they make that median income of $145,000 for 3 people. And they pay that median rent of $3,500. And after they've paid that rent, they have $77,000 left. After they pay all of the basic sort of non-negotiable expenses, they've got $21,000 left. That's $1,700 a month for clothes, for incidentals, for unexpected emergencies. I would say for vacation, but I don't think it's in the budget. And what happens if that household is at 60% of median? You don't make it. You can't cover the expenses. And it is because of this dilemma, the dilemma facing our people in the middle and really facing lower income people. That's why 40% of Massachusetts was housing insecure in 2025. I was shocked when I heard that, but as I started looking deeper, I said, oh no, that makes perfect sense. Oh, sorry. Okay, so let's turn to the housing. This is Newton's housing stock, really almost exactly a year ago when we finished our inventory study. David and I devoted our lives to this for a few years, and we finished our study, and what we found is we have approximately 33,700 units of housing in Newton. 69% are ownership. Of those, now this is an older slide, 88, but really now it's up to 94 affordable homeownership units. And that's actually not bad to add 6 units in one year on the ownership, but it's 0.4% of the ownership housing is affordable in Newton, 0.4%. You see this little tiny, it's a white line that has 88 by it. It's supposed to be orange, but it was so small in the pie chart that it couldn't pick up the color. In rental, we have almost 10,500 rental units, and that's 31% of our housing stock. Actually, about what you'd expect for a community like Newton. Of those, there are nearly 2,000 affordable units, or 19% of the rental units. So in total, we have 2,075 total affordable units, 6.2% of our housing stock. I think we can do better. Every ward Here's another one that we get a lot of, that was really interesting to do. Every ward has affordable housing, every single ward. But the distribution is not even. So 53% of all affordable units are in wards 1, 4, and 5. And 11% of all affordable units are in wards 6 and 7. So another way to look at this, for people who like maps, the common wisdom is that you can see the distribution across the city. And the common wisdom is that most affordable housing is north of the Turnpike. And yours truly might have said that at one point until we did the inventory. And the fact is that 37% of all affordable units are north of I-90 and 63% are south. Now, as Luke points out, only 28% of our land mass is north of the Turnpike, but still it's not as heavily weighted as I would have guessed. So let's look at affordable rental. And you remember I said low-income family is our priority, and I think you'll see why. We actually updated this chart as of February of 2026 because we had made some good progress, and we should all pat ourselves on the back that Newton has made some progress in the last year or two. And so we now have 1,960 rental units that are existing and occupied, and we have 158 in construction. And so once they're in construction, we feel confident that they're going to actually come to fruition. So that means we're up to 2,118. Sorry, Josephine, it's still not to be scoffed at. And we have another 581 that are permitted, but not yet in construction. So we hope they all make it but we know the story. So if they all make it, we will have 2,699 affordable rental units. Of those, the majority are for senior housing. It serves people 60 or 62 and offers in limited instances, there's housing for non-elderly people with disabilities. 32% are general occupancy or NEH housing, serves anyone who's income qualified. And of that, family housing, 2 to 4 bedroom units, constitute 68% of the NEH housing, or 22% of the total housing. Now, you don't have to be a family to be in a 2 to 4 family unit, right? So that's not 100% families. We know that there are instances where there are other household configurations, but that's the housing we have for families. And the final group is supportive housing, and actually, Newton does better than many communities in providing this housing. We have 14% of our units are for people with, for adults with significant disabilities, for formerly homeless, and for survivors of domestic violence. In addition, there are 75 units that are either located in senior housing or in general housing that are set aside for people who fit this category. Example, there are 9 units at Golda Meir for formerly homeless people. That was part of a settlement from the Engine 6 issue. This was a really interesting thing to look at. 40B and inclusionary zoning drives general housing. What does that mean? That means that it was the development vehicle that created the most of those units. And public funding, deep subsidy, drives senior housing. So when you think about To Life, those are senior housing that were funded with deep subsidies, and they're low income. And the result is that senior housing, the majority of senior housing serves low income people, and the majority of general housing is at that 80% and serves middle income, moderate income. That's why we say we need more low-income family housing. So what are our conclusions? Let's grow all affordable rentals, but prioritize low-income family rental. We should try and emphasize lower incomes in all of our family housing, while recognizing that there's a pressing need for all types of affordable housing. How are we going to do that? So the city has a limited amount of funds. Some of it is managed by the city, the Community Development Block Grant and Home Funds, some of it by the trust. And we need to make sure that we're using that in the wisest way, making it go the furthest. And so we should leverage those funds with other subsidies. We looked at development over a 10-year period. This is kind of a hard issue. It's just a hard issue. But we found that projects require fewer city dollars if they're larger, and on a pretty big basis. Smaller projects under 10 units averaged $351,000 a unit. 33 to 49 unit projects averaged $64,000 per unit. And that's because those units were eligible for state and federal grants that paid the vast majority. And our money was just that necessary local investment. And so it's not that that's better housing, it's just that we don't have that much money, so that's more efficient. We should target permitting. We should expand by right family zoning and support friendly 40B and encourage deeper affordability for permitted projects. We should take advantage of municipal and state properties for affordable housing. We just finished a study of some affordable vacant municipal land. The city just finished it, and now they're looking at what state land is in the city. And finally, we should incentivize private development of family rentals, similar to what happened with the Armory. And we should use all of our tools. We don't have to use all of our tools at once, but if we're able to signal will and bring something to the table, we can attract good developers. So, affordable homeownership. Oh, sorry, the X was wrong slideshow. It was supposed to be taken out. As I said, tiny amount of affordable homeownership in the city, but with the Beacon, we added 6 units, and that's a real step forward. We hadn't added new units for a while. There are really 2 approaches to creating affordable homeownership. The first is the majority of the way, just as the Beacon did, is developers permitting projects under 40B or inclusionary zoning are required to do affordable home ownership. And they write down the cost of that ownership within their development budget. In addition, some affordable buyers receive down payment and closing cost grants or loans and mortgage interest rate write-downs. And that's actually often layered onto the purchase of one of the developer units. So an important thing to keep in mind is that the resale price for an affordable unit is restricted to the original income tier. If the original income tier was 80%, the resale price has to be 80%. And sometimes buyers who got down payment grants and loans have to repay that money. So that means that the affordable buyer's home value is always limited and can't grow faster than the area median income. And we know that our housing prices have soared well beyond that. Affordable buyers don't have access to that equity accumulation. Why don't we have more affordable home ownership? It's too expensive. It's really, really expensive. If it costs, this is a very conservative estimate, but if it costs $800,000 to develop an affordable unit, the maximum you can sell it for is $320,000. That means that there's a $480,000 subsidy that's needed. Remember we talked about leverage and rental property? Newton isn't eligible for the state's main capital subsidy programs for home ownership. And so we would have to carry the full brunt ourselves, and we can do 5 to 10 rental units for that price. So, as I said at the beginning, we should rely on permitting to produce affordable ownership, and we should think about refining our policy-guided programmatic goals for home ownership. Last section. Let's preserve and keep what we have. Use restrictions sometimes are in perpetuity, but many times have a tenure of 30 years to perpetuity, to forever. In Newton, of our affordable housing, in the next 10 years, 302 units are at risk of their affordability restrictions expiring. Now, not every developer will take those units out of affordability, but there are real financial pressures on developers, and even great developers sometimes have to make that choice. In addition, there's always classic risks of physical deterioration, financial problems, and market forces that in Newton are compounded by a concentration of 5 companies own 68% of our affordable housing. So those are just bigger risks. If one company falls prey to any of these problems. So I said that there are 302 affordable units at risk. Now, that calculation was done in 2025. And we knew of those, 51 units were at risk in 2025 or 2026. We actually lost 23 units in 2025 of those 51. This is a real risk, and to preserve affordability is a very technical, very long-term problem. I look at Jeannie, she's working hard, and they start 10 years out. So what we need to do is we need to plan for and be ready to invest in our existing affordable homes to make sure they stay. We need to maintain a 5 to 10-year rolling inventory with really engaging with the owners to make sure. And we have to be ready to support recapitalization needs. You know, who of us, among us, has not taken out a home rehab loan to fix something on our house? Developer who's locked into long-term affordability may need some support for those recapitalization. Okay, so this is it. Prioritize low-income family housing, but support all rental housing. Rely on Chapter 40B and inclusionary zoning to produce home ownership, and plan for and invest to preserve our existing portfolio. We have a decent toolkit, and we can boost it. We can expand by right multifamily housing. We have a 58-unit deal that is coming to Newton. By right, 100% affordable. We can do that more. We need to support friendly 40Bs. We need to source more money for the trust. We always spend it as fast as we get it. And we need to build public will for affordable housing. Thank you to Newton for Everyone for taking that on. So if we utilize these strategies, we can expand housing opportunities for all those people that we see in our everyday lives who are important parts of our community. People I think we all consider friends, but they can't live here. And in the process, Newton will become an even more welcoming and vibrant community. The end.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Ann. Couple thoughts, and then we'll go to questions. If you're on Zoom, you can type your questions in the chat, and Kathy will. You have a mic, Kathy? Kathy will read those out. We'll intersperse those in. You know, when you were talking about the, I thought it was great to see the sort of examples of types of people, types of jobs people might have in the different categories. You know, I think one term we all learned during COVID for those kinds of workers you talked about, essential workers, and to have so I think that speaks to the sort of the need to provide housing for folks in those categories in our community. I was also struck by the fact that we have about 2,000 affordable rental units today. We have about 455 in the pipeline. That's a significant increase, I think substantially driven by these large developments, Northland, Riverside, and the big slug from the new VCOD project by right in Newtonville. Those large projects, you know, Riverside has been in the works since 2009. You know, Northland, less old than that, but still, you know, 2018, I think. And if you think about the 455 families that could have been living in those units, think about how quickly the 58 units in Newtonville, it's already permitted. The VCOD passed, you know, a little more than 2.5 years ago, and that's at the same place that Riverside and Northland are at today. So like the time matters here, especially with the fact that these units roll over or you know, pass out of the inventory, as Ann was saying. I think it's easy to think we should, you know, when we talk a lot in Newton for Everyone about approving more things by right and streamlining this process, it can sound like, oh, you know, we're just trying to shovel more money into the developers more quickly and whatever. But the units matter and the time matters. If you were a family who was looking for one of those units, if we'd approved those things sooner, you would have gotten years to live there. And that means something. Same thing with Dunstan Eats. I mean, you'd see it all over town. So just wanted to share that. But yeah, I'll shut up for a second. We can go to questions. If anybody has any question, you can ask a question. No comments. Please keep your questions to 30 seconds. We've had a little trouble with that.
While people are raising their hands, let me just say that the message that By Right Development sends to developers is so positive because it says we are a welcoming community. The developer coming in to do those 58 units has never done a by right development in Massachusetts. They are a large, major developer, big national developer. And they don't just bring 58 units. They also have really excellent resident services support for their residents. So we get a lot.
Question from the chat. Someone asked, what's a friendly 40B?
Okay. Now, see, I tried not to get too geeky, but 40B, comprehensive permits, every community with less than 10% of its housing stock deed restricted is subject to Chapter 40B. A developer can come in and ask for a comprehensive permit covering all of the local permitting in one fell swoop. There's tight timelines, and if the city says no, the developer can appeal to the State Housing Appeals Committee. If you're close, you're reaching Fair Harbor. There are a lot of communities in Massachusetts that are past their 40B 10% limit, and some of those communities have chosen to do friendly 40Bs. The developer doesn't have the right to appeal to the state, but they can still go through that expedited development process and the community has the ability to think about what's really right for that particular parcel and that particular development proposal. So I encourage, as we're hovering around fair housing, safe harbor, that we think about that friendly 40B approach, and there are some communities that can offer lots of guidance.
Okay, I have several questions. I'll keep it to two, and if we have time, come back to me. Okay. You mentioned that Newton is not eligible for state and other subsidies. Can you tell me why it is not?
Sure. We have too much money. It's really simple. The programs, the major capital program is set aside for gateway city communities and communities that have concentrated low-income census tracts.
Okay, that makes sense.
It does make sense. Unfortunately, the state has limited resources too.
Right. So my second quick question is, when a developer comes in with a 40B ask, what percentage does Newton require be quote-unquote affordable?
Yeah.
And is it always 80%?
No, great question. So it's actually not up to Newton. It's a state law. And the developer has a choice. They can do 25% of the units at 80% area median income, or 20% of the units at 50% AMI. I'm looking at David, so he'll tell me if you never know when you're up here which bite. And so it's often a tough economic analysis for a developer, but I think in 38 Craft, the community was very compelling in working with the developer to get them to do fewer, deeper, affordable units. 78, thank you. That's what I thought, and then I said, whoop. As I said, those numbers, it's hard when you have spent your life doing real estate development and you got you have to have good second eyes. And one of the things back to the local will, one of the things that I think was compelling to that developer was that they got a lot of local community support for going that route. So if there was a little less cost benefit, that time is money.
I just wanted to go back to your first question that you just asked about state funding. I wanted to clarify, we're not eligible in Newton for those state subsidies just in the world of home ownership projects? Is that, I want to make sure
That's
what
right.
we're talking about.
That's right.
Because there's plenty of such for rental projects.
And in fact, the state is very excited when we come in with good rental projects. They want us to be doing more of our fair share. Thanks.
With part of VCOD was the MRT zones, which are taking older, in Newton a lot of times big Victorians, and splitting them into 4 to 6 units. How? I mean, I think this is more of a missing middle than a deeply affordable. But how do you view that in terms of a piece of the puzzle? And could we extend MRT type zoning to more parts of the city? Because right now it's restricted to, I think, half a mile from a train station. I would think we should do it for the whole city. That's just me. But
I think there's a lot of excitement about MRT, and I think that it offers, in that increasing our supply of housing will temper our rental costs, and so it is a great way. It's a middle market solution, and it's a good one. But it's too small a scale to put any affordability restrictions in place, and so it's just not going to meet the needs of low-income people.
One other thing I would just say about MRT, and then we'll go to the next question, is we're also, those new units are adding tax revenue to the city. So to the extent that providing this affordable housing costs money, the more money we have in the budget, the more money is available to be spent on things like that. So that's sort of the other angle there.
And they may be bringing in more school children to help keep our school population up and our state share of school coming in.
And I've learned so much with your report, but I knew really nothing about expiring use, and which to me is just a huge red flag and a real worry. What have other cities or towns, how have they addressed it? And should we be working on something in a more formal way?
And I think that the council may be looking at this already. Many communities that really track the use expirations in their affordable housing stock and work with developers early on. As I said, it is an extremely technical area of work. You have to really have both regulatory and finance acumen. And so my guess is that it's something that the city would need to actually, with particularly significant projects, bring in a consultant. The good news is we actually have some of the national experts that are already residents of Newton, and we have some really knowledgeable people who can at least help the city get on the right path. It is not my field. I built new stuff, and so we haven't gotten to the end of the use restrictions for anything that I developed, but it is a really important issue that we we lost units in part because we weren't in the game early enough. And I was not sensitive enough in 2023 when we started looking at housing in Newton. It's a good example of what we learned from the study. I was not sensitive enough to the expiring use issue in Newton. So, you know, it's, we can all learn.
The state does track expiring use properties statewide. I think they're still doing that. Is that right? Okay. So there is some assistance we could get from the state's work on that. They have these lists.
Doesn't cover all of our properties, but it is a really good start.
Okay.
I think just to respond to David, we do have a state preservation statute. It applies to programs that have state money, basically, in one form or another. And as Ann showed you in her presentation, the bulk of the family general occupancy affordable housing in Newton is developed through Chapter 40B and IZ, and that's not covered by the state statute. And so when you think about the risk profile, you know, where the bulk of your general occupancy family affordable housing is in that developer driven bucket, that, you know, that risk is really enhanced in a place like Newton.
That was my in-house counsel. I try not to go without representation.
Thank you very much. When I was in City Council with Deb Crossley, we started the ADUs with it, and right now there's a couple of things happening. With it, as we were building Cooper Center, there was a lot of surveying done out, and many people have come from staying in the city of Newton, not retiring. Sorry, they may be retiring, but they're not moving to Florida. They're staying in the city. There's probably around 100 ADUs in the city, and there's been lately there's been some work making it easier to get an ADU. So with it, people who have a big house and retired and having with it, either family members or other people moving in. So how can that help in the process?
Well, once again, ADUs are not income restricted, so they tend to be, but they create housing stock that's really critical. And for some of us of a certain age, it's a great idea to think about, you could have your children next door taking care of you without living in the same dwelling. But, so I think that ADUs they're part of the puzzle. This is not a single answer. There's not a single bullet that's going to solve it. And so that's a piece when Newton for Everyone does its middle market. We need to focus on ADUs as one of the solutions.
Someone in the chat asked, how does the Newton Housing Authority fit into this?
Oh, great. I had to skinny down the presentation, and that was one of the slides cut out. Newton Housing Authority has about 625,000 units. 625 units of affordable housing, and I can't remember, under 1,000, but rental vouchers that they manage. They are our largest affordable housing provider in the city. And housing authorities are not just Newton Housing Authority, but they do many things right. They have a great dedicated staff. They've really expanded their resident services, but they are constrained in the way that housing authorities are across the Commonwealth with grossly under-budgeted capital and operating budgets, both on the state and the federal side. And that means that they that they really don't have the resources for the sort of ongoing repair and maintenance that they need. So one of the things under the Affordable Housing Act that was, one of the great victories last year that the state passed is there was significant funding for public housing. And it turns out, seemed like a huge amount of money, but there's so much competition that to be competitive, you have to be able to do not just rehab of your units, but you have to expand units. And so Newton Housing Authority has surveyed their properties and identified 3 or 4 that actually have a lot of capacity to expand, and the properties need to be rehabbed. And so they will be, I think, coming before us with a proposal to do that. That makes them very competitive for the state funding. And it's the sort of thing that we need to really be supportive as a community to help them both add more affordable housing and improve the housing that they have. So we need to be, I was not sensitive enough to the Housing Authority, even though I spent a little while on it as a commissioner, but until I did this study and realized what a critical piece of our infrastructure they are.
Another question in the chat. As a practical matter, what opportunities do Newton residents have in the next 3 to 6 months to advocate for more affordable housing in Newton? And do you have any specific examples?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to turn it back to the audience. Who has a? Deb.
I wanted to make a comment. This is the perfect question. The gentleman in front here who asked about why can't we expand the MRT district? And then you earlier talked, Ann, about the by right development opportunity that this big development company took advantage of and is coming to Newton and doing a 100% affordable complex in a 5.5-story building on Washington Street. Why could they do that? They could do that because we passed that zoning a couple years back that allows that to happen. And the incentive for the all affordable was by giving another story. And for the gentleman in the front row, and this is what you all can advocate for, the gentleman in the front row said, why can't we expand this opportunity? Well, you can expand this opportunity. It's actually a very simple solution, and as our congressman says, simple but not easy. The simple solution is we have the zoning. It's already written. It's very good. It has very clear rules of engagement for the developer that tells them exactly what we want. We only applied it to the map, however, in a very limited fashion, only to 6 of our 12 village business districts. And we even curtailed it within some of those 6 business districts. So I want to suggest that people could, if they are so inclined, advocate to expand the map for the zoning we already have written.
Thanks, that was great. And I would say one other thing is that we can make sure that all of our city councilors and the mayor understand that more affordable housing is a real priority, that we need more affordable housing, and that there are tools within the city. The city did a land study that the trust funded, and I think that there are a variety of other opportunities to try and move that forward. But it has to be a priority, and there are many priorities in the city. So we're jockeying for space on people's agendas. And I'm not a great political person, but I usually think that if you're loud enough and get enough support, that our elected officials are there to represent the constituents in the city.
So I'm an architect, and I had to do continuing education. So I went to the Lincoln Land Institute and did a whole study on, they had a whole program on what's called land value capture. It's a real estate theory. And I had to do an analysis, good, bad, and indifferent, for the city of Newton. And the one that was really good was the one that the city of Newton did for, I think it's 26 Austin Street. And so I analyzed that for this part of this program, this land value capture, and it got an A for doing a good project. And I know in talking to Deb, she said, well, the thing that almost killed it was adding the workforce housing. But the state stepped up and paid for it. That's a good example.
Right. And there is a fabulous case study that looks at Austin Street. And so if anybody wants to think about how we've done work in this city, let me know. I'll get you a copy of it. It's from the Kennedy School.
This is more of a comment from someone in the chat or who's online. He's a Newton resident, but he's also the chief financial officer of an affordable housing developer. And he says a big thing that in terms of time being money is that they have to pay interest on their construction loans, and that is high. So whenever they can cut down the number of days they have to hold those construction loans, it lowers the cost of that development for affordable housing.
Right. Time is money. That assumes you get to construction. Those 3 or 4 years of permitting or longer holding the land costs, very expensive.
So who was doing community outreach to speak to residents who might be a little on the fence about an affordable development coming to their neighborhood?
That's an excellent question.
We are. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. Yeah, do you have a different answer?
I don't. I'm hoping you're going to save me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we do events like this in the hopes of reaching people. Part of the theory behind Newton for Everyone is that housing policy is not the most engaging or interesting, but that it does affect, it matters for people in ways they might not expect. People who want to live in a socioeconomically diverse city may not realize that there's something they can do in the realm of housing advocacy that would help make that happen for them. We have a similar theory about climate change, about village centers. Even if you're someone who thinks taxes are too high, I would say if you build more housing, theoretically you could use it for tax cuts. It's not what I would do with the money, but there's a pitch for everybody, and so we're trying to do that. I think if you want to contribute to that, I think letters to the editor, writing and reaching out to your elected representatives, almost all of whom claim to support affordable housing. I would ask them, Josephine would want me to ask them, what are you doing about affordable housing? Because there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. Now I don't have to call on you and you can give your comment.
And I just, I think that your question is to the point. I think it's a statement. It's not a question. I think Engine 6 does some, but Engine 6 is a housing advocacy group that I believe, actually, Kathy, you may need to save me. I grew out of a battle in Waban to turn a fire station into 9 units of deeply affordable housing, and it was very ugly. You remember I mentioned under Golda Meir, there's 9 units that came out of a settlement from a HUD suit. Yeah. But I think that if we are serious, we have to be ready to go deeper. I think Can Do has done this for years and years and years, advocated for housing. And I think you're right that it is talking to neighbors. Developers often do that. They go out, and they spend lots and lots of time talking to the neighbors. But you know, that may be something that we as a community need to spend more time thinking about. So thank you for raising it.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, one more thing. For those of you in the room, there's this handout that lists some of the ideas we have for creating more affordable housing. And for those that are on Zoom, I put a link in the chat to this handout.
Great. Well, yeah, I think that's all we have, all the time we have for. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll just thank a couple of other folks. We want to thank Congregation Dorshet Tzedek for hosting us tonight. We want to thank Dennis for handling all of the audio-visual stuff. If you like this event and you're not on our email list, please sign up on your way out the door. If you like this event and you want to work to advocate and persuade our neighbors and our elected officials to expand the supply of affordable housing in Newton, there's a sign-up sheet over there. You can sign up to work at some of our village fair days that we have booths at. It's fun. Speaking of meeting people and talking to them, I always enjoy those. You can sign up over there. Or if you're interested in helping with volunteer coordination or putting on the events, just come and talk to any of us over at the table. But yeah, that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for coming.